Hello and welcome to Talking Live. I'm Dr. Robi Ludwig right here in Starshop Studio in Times Square. And I am so thrilled to introduce you to somebody who's going to help us hopefully all learn how to speak a little bit better. Tricia Brouk, who is the executive director and producer of Speaker Salon. She trains people for TED Talks. She has a long qualified history of helping all kinds of talented people raise their game in terms of how to be a better speaker. And we were just talking about our time in prison because Tricia, no, we did not commit any crimes, and I don't like the way you guys are thinking. Tricia also does documentaries, which we'll also get into. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I also realized that you know my cousin because you're in the theater world.
The theater world,
yeah.
Yes. Ian and I worked on a project many years ago, so it was nice to hear from him today.
Well, he loves you, and I can totally see why. You know, we were talking about it, and public speaking is scarier than death for certain people. Because at least in death, you don't feel it.
You don't know what's happening, right?
Hopefully.
When you're on a stage in front of people, you know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary.
And I was saying to you earlier before we started the show, even though I do television and I've done radio and I do this show, public speaking is something very different.
It's a completely different beast because you're naked, you're vulnerable, you walk out onto a stage and you're having a conversation with the audience without them actually talking back to you. So you have to understand how to connect with them on such a vulnerable, intimate level while knowing that they're not actually going to interact. It's very interesting, this art form.
You started in dance, which is a different way of communicating. Tell me a little bit about your journey from dancing, being on stage, to being behind the scenes.
I came to New York from Missouri to pursue my career as a dancer. I wanted to move to New York and work with Baryshnikov. So I did. I worked with Baryshnikov.
Oh my goodness, what was that like?
It was amazing. It was like everything you could imagine. He's a complete professional. He's very respectful. He's a hard worker. He sits on the floor like the other dancers to warm up. So I had the most amazing dance career. I was very fortunate. I toured all around the world with Lucinda Childs and Robert Wilson and big dance theater. And when it was time for me to sort of move on to my next phase, I decided to do a one-woman show and do an entire evening of me dancing all of the pieces other choreographers had made on me over my career, and then also choreograph a few of my own. So I did this show called Dining Alone. And I liken it to the monks who make the sand sculptures, right? They put the sand in the mandala and it takes them a really long time to make the most beautiful piece of art. And then when it's over, they wipe it away. And that's exactly how it was for my dance career. I had this amazing culmination and then I was ready to move on. So from there, I wasn't planning to continue in showbiz. I was ready to sort of move on completely, and I got a call from John Turturro, and he said, will you come over to Brooklyn to the Mark Morris Dance Studio? I want to have you dance with a bunch of firefighters. I'm making this movie, and there's a scene with a bunch of firefighters. So when John Turturro calls and says, can you come dance with me? You say yes.
Did he know you from your work as a dancer?
He knew me from his Pilates teacher, who was a dancer that I had worked with. So she recommended me. So I go to the Mark Morris Dance Studio. I'm walking down the hall and Susan Sarandon passes me. Okay, amazing. I'm about to go meet John Turturro. The most amazing Susan Sarandon passes me. I get into the room and John says, I want you to dance around the room like you're on fire. Kate Winslet is going to be playing Tula in my movie, and I want to see what that might look like. Having zero experience as a choreographer, not knowing what the outcome of this was going to be, but I simply said yes, because what did I have to lose? So I danced around the room with all these New York City firefighters, completely, fearlessly.
Could they dance?
No, but that was amazing. They could move, and that's what was so amazing about it.
Yeah.
So the next thing I know, I'm choreographing his feature film, which is where I met my dear late friend Jim Gandolfini and worked with Jim and Kate and Susan Sarandon and Eddie Izzard and Bobby Cannavale and Christopher Walken, and it was just the most amazing experience. So it was an opportunity that I took Talk about public speaking and the fear. It was an opportunity that I took. There was so much fear there, but I knew if I didn't say yes, I would never know what was possible after that. So I teach my speakers today to really go through, embrace, allow that fear to serve you. It's really important.
Yeah.
So moving out of choreography, the organic, natural next step for me was directing and writing. And I went from directing into writing because somebody said, you should direct a parody musical about 50 Shades of Grey. Okay, show me a script. So I was waiting and waiting and waiting and just decided I was becoming too impatient. So I wrote my own script.
So you taught yourself how to write your own script.
Yes.
How does one even do that?
You sit down and you understand the arc, and you understand an opening and a closing, and you understand the story you're going to tell and the picture you're going to paint.
Now, is that parallel to how you teach people how to talk, let's say, for a TED Talk? Because you describe, a TED Talk as really being important for one's career. And I've certainly seen TED Talks. First of all, my son is obsessed with them.
Oh.
He watches them all the time. They're really fascinating, and they've launched people's careers.
They have launched people's careers. I love the art form of TED and TEDx. An idea worth spreading, getting an audience to adopt your idea as their own is so sexy. And I think the idea of teaching people that the difference between a TED or a TEDx and a keynote is that the TED world is all about a gift, not an ask, an idea, not an issue. And ultimately, you want the audience to adopt your idea as your own, as their own at the end. So it is about inspiring and motivating and teaching, but it's also about sharing a gift of information, an idea that doesn't make them walk away thinking, this is an issue. How am I going to fix it? Yeah, global warming is real, but I can't do anything about it.
Is that a keynote speech?
A keynote is when you set up the audience, this is who I am and this is why I'm the expert. This is what I'm going to talk about. Then I talk about it. Then I wrap it up and there's a call to action. Buy my book, donate to this cause, sign up for something. So the keynote is about that formula. And a TEDx is really gift, not an ask, idea, not an issue, and having the audience adopt your idea as their own.
So if somebody comes to you and they say, Tricia, I really want to create a TED Talk, where do you start with that person?
I ask why. The first question is why. Because if you want to do a TED Talk to be famous, it's the wrong reason.
I wouldn't even think of that. There's so many easier ways to be famous than to give a talk. I mean, that's just hard work.
Yes.
Has anyone said that to you? I want to give a TED Talk because I want to be famous?
I have had speakers come to me and say, I want to have a TED Talk so that I can have more views on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
Now, does royalty, the crown of TED, bring royalty? Absolutely. When you wear the crown of TED or TEDx, people will call you back. People will open the doors. And I can say that specifically because when I became a TEDx organizer, I was the executive producer of TEDx Lincoln Square for 2 years. When I wore that crown as the producer of TEDx, yeah, people called me back. People called me back. People invited me to things. It was a very wonderful opportunity because the brand is so amazing.
Yeah.
I love the brand. I love Chris Anderson. I love what they stand for. So I think if you want to do a TED or a TED Talk, a TEDx, it is because your idea cannot live inside of you for one more second. You have to talk about it. You have to share it with people. You have to talk about it because you know it will have global impact. That is why you want to spend 9 months birthing a TED Talk.
Now, you have said everyone has a story, and your goal is to bring it out. Is that true?
I believe that to be true. I think many people don't believe that their story is important. I think many people don't understand that they are different, that they are unique human beings. So if you're going to talk about the world being round, that's not new information. Yeah. But I'm sure you would express that far differently than the way I would, because we're different people, because we're each unique human beings. So I think when people come to me and they say, I don't have anything interesting to say, I don't have an interesting life, that's when I go, okay, let's talk about this. What do you love? What do you hate? What do you get up in the morning? And all of a sudden, I've got this incredible idea out of them. I shine that mirror back and they...
Now, let me go back a little bit because you work with people also that are not giving TED Talks. Why would someone hire you if they feel that they can't speak in front of people? That's not something they want to do. How do they find you? What are they looking for?
People work with me to become comfortable communicating, to be comfortable doing interviews, to be comfortable having a conversation with their spouse, with their children. The idea of communication is not limited to a stage.
Wow, with their kids and children, wow,
It
and
trickles.
spouses and spouses.
It trickles down. It trickles down. So if you're working with me on a talk, or if you're
Yeah.
working with me on presentation and performance and delivery, when you go home, I have taught you the technique of objective and action. And that means, do you want your partner to take out the trash? That's your objective. How are you going to get them to do it? Your action. Bribe, beg, seduce, pay. So all of the techniques that I use for public speaking, you can use in real life.
So somebody comes to you and they say, I need you to help me bring out my story. You mentioned how you have them write down 100 topics.
That is one way. If
One-
I'm working with them individually, I will do an interview process. And it's really called the active listening session. I'll spend 2 hours asking you tons of questions and getting really, really deep into what it is that you think is important, what your idea actually is, and then I'll reflect that back onto you. And that sort of digging, that excavation of ideas happens because I can create a safe space. I've worked with actors my whole life, and when you're working with actors, if you're in a scene and you don't feel safe, you can't play the scene. So I have to create that same safe space with my speakers so that you start telling me everything. And it's safe, it's confidential.
It almost sounds therapeutic.
It probably is therapeutic for the
Yeah.
speaker because they get to express things they may not otherwise have thought about. And here's an example, Robbie. I worked with a speaker and she had started a foundation 16 years ago for her sons. 3 of her children were born blind. Kristin Smedley. So she came to me and said, I want to do a TEDx. I want to get a bigger reach. I was not yet a TEDx organizer. And I said, let's do it. Put it out into the universe. Our active listening session, I have this foundation. I've been speaking for 16 years. I want to talk about retinal disease. She was very clear. And at the end of it, I said, Kristin, your talk is not about retinal disease. It's about how you learn to see the world differently through the eyes of your children. And then it became a global idea. And that is something that's important when I work with speakers as well. It's context. The 3 questions that are really important if you want to do a talk are, why is this important? Why is it important to you? And why is it important to the world? And if you can answer those 3 questions clearly, then you've got a global idea worth spreading.
What does somebody do once they've been accepted to TED or TEDx? They want to develop their story. Do they memorize it? I'm always amazed whenever I'm looking at any TED Talk, everybody looks so comfortable.
That's because they've worked for 9 months to get
And
that
I'm
way.
like, how is everybody so comfortable? Because I can see it being so unnerving, and not everybody is good on stage, but everybody on TED or TEDx appears to be.
They have rehearsed, they have practiced, they have worked with coaches. TEDx provides their speakers with support. So it's really, if you are choosing to take that challenge, choose to prepare for it. And that also means vetting the TEDx organizers. TEDx is an independently organized event, and we get tons of support from the TED community. So they make it very easy for us to do really good work. However, it is an independently organized event, so you want to make sure that the TEDx organizers are good. They know how to produce sound and video, and lights are good, because that video will live on YouTube for the rest of your life.
How do you determine that?
The best way is to go to YouTube and watch the videos.
Oh, okay.
And also ask. Get to know the TEDx organizers. Get to know the speakers. Ask the other speakers, what was your experience like? And there's such an excitement about doing a TEDx. People say yes to the first one. Vet us. Vet us.
So if somebody offers or asks you to do a TED Talk, wait and see and do your research.
Absolutely.
And what if you determine that you don't like the particular location?
You say, thank you very much. This isn't the right fit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you had people do that?
Not for my event. However, I've had speakers who've done events where I didn't know what the event was going to be and the sound was bad and she didn't want to share the video.
How can you help somebody be more of a bold, charismatic speaker? Because I know that some of it can be taught, but some of it is innate.
Absolutely. I think charisma and your ability to be comfortable speaking and connecting with people is definitely something that's innate, but you can cultivate being captivating. And I know that because actors on Broadway do 8 shows a week, and sometimes they just don't feel like it.
Yeah, I don't even know how they do that. I wonder that.
Well, they understand the technique of acting and the technique of being present on the stage. So that's the objective action.
Do they feed off the energy of the audience as well? Because I would think that has to be a part of it. If you're doing the same script all the time, I don't know that I could do that.
It's really, really hard work.
Of course, let's get clear. Nobody's asked me. And I've never tried out for it. I'm just thinking outside the box here.
When you're doing a Broadway show or off Broadway or any kind of theater, you absolutely feed off of the audience. And that's true for public speaking as well.
Yeah.
So the being captivating is about understanding who you're with, the scene that you're playing, always staying connected and having that intention behind what you're saying.
How do you stay connected with your audience? And what if you have a hostile audience?
If you have a hostile audience, your objective is the same, which is getting them to give you their attention and to potentially do something at the end of your talk, whether it's buy a book or follow you on social media. So if your audience is hostile, you have to change your action. You have to do something with your delivery that will get them on your side. And it could be entertain, it could be deflect, it could be silence, it could be a million things. But that's why when you're on stage, you have to have all cylinders firing at all times. It's not just about orating.
How, just quickly, does one use their sense of fear and monitoring their voice if they are frightened? Because I think that's something that the audience can sense.
Absolutely.
You can probably hide it a bit with training, but
I think rather than the idea of hiding it, you rehearse through it.
okay.
And that means starting out by creating an opportunity for your first rehearsal under mild stress. Rehearse in front of somebody that isn't going to judge you, your partner, your friend, and then increase that level of stress just a little bit.
By inviting your enemy
Yes.
to come and watch you.
That's maybe later.
Yes. As your final,
Yes.
I guess, rehearsal.
Right? That would really increase the stress. So when your body betrays you, you're going to be able to deliver that talk because you've rehearsed it under those circumstances.
I used to work in a psychiatric hospital, and we had different kinds of therapists, and there was a theater therapist. I guess she would drama therapy, they called it at the time. And she said something really brilliant. She said, you know, your level of nerves has to do with what the audience represents to you. And I thought that was so brilliant because if the audience represents a loving, good mother, you're probably going to feel better about giving your speech. Or if they represent your worst nightmare fear, it's going to bring something else out in you.
I think that's a really good point. And what's also important about that is reminding yourself that the audience is actually there to see you. Yeah. You've been invited to take that stage, so it's already built in that they want you to win.
Do you recommend memorizing? I've done speeches where I've just said, you know what, I just want to go off the cuff. Of course, I'm prepared. Right. And then I've done some speeches where it was a keynote and I wanted to read part of it. What do you recommend?
I recommend being so rehearsed that you sound conversational. I don't recommend bullet points because you can meander, you can go off and never come back. But that's because I'm in theater and we rehearse. We know what we're doing. We know the steps. We know the choreography. We know the book. We know everything. We know the music and the lyrics. If you're doing a 45-minute keynote and you're using slides, use the slides as bullets, but then also understand if you start going off on a tangent, pull yourself back really quickly. I think most people can memorize a 45-minute keynote, and most of my speakers do.
Have there been any breakout stars from the stories at your salon? At your Speaker
Absolutely.
Salon?
So Speaker Salon is something that I started 2 summers ago as a beta, as a test. I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could have speakers come and do like an open mic night and I can work with them once a week? And then all of a sudden it became apparent to me that I could train them and then I could put on a show at the end and invite speaker bureaus or TEDx organizers. So I could put them rehearsed and ready to be seen. Just like actors with agents. When you work in an acting workshop, at the end of it, they do a showcase and agents come. So I was able to start this speaker salon, and there are so many breakout stars from this, but Mari Carmen Pizarro is my number one. And that is because she reached out to me before I was a TEDx organizer, and we were talking about potentially working together. And then I became the executive producer of TEDx Lincoln Square, and she applied 3 times. And the first 2 applications she submitted were not good. And not to give her special treatment, I gave her a few notes, but I didn't really tell her what to do. Second application came in, still not good. Try again. Third application came in and she nailed it. So she was able to take the TEDx stage for the first time. Then we worked on her keynote. Then she came to the speaker salon. And now she's with A Speakers, and they represent Mel Robbins and Barbara Corcoran.
Mel Robbins is somebody who gained huge success and actually her own TV show as a result of her TEDx
Absolutely.
talk.
Yeah.
So that's incredible. What do you think makes for a talk that gets accepted by TEDx? Is there something
It's really
unusual?
I think unusual. Most TEDx organizers really look at the ideas. That's the first thing they want. They want the idea. They want the idea worth spreading. Maybe it has to do with their theme. So that's where we start. Then it's really all up to the organizer. I always want diversity of idea and diversity of speaker. That is really important to me. I also want people who think outside of the box, and that's because of my theater background. I had a woman apply with an idea how air guitar can help cure cancer.
Oh my God.
Don't you want to listen to that talk?
I do.
I know.
I do. That's incredible. Well, we do something called the Quick 5 before we help people find you. Would you be willing to go along with our Quick 5 questions so people can get to know you?
Absolutely.
Yes. What quality do all of your friends have in common?
They're all loyal.
Oh, I love that. So you choose well. Yes. What goal do you think humanity is not focused enough on achieving?
Connecting, real connection.
And I imagine that would impact speeches as well. Do you find people are looking at their cell phones and are less able to focus?
I think people are looking at their cell phones. I think they are training themselves to not listen. We're losing the art form of listening.
I agree. What tips or tricks have you picked up from your job or jobs?
Presence. Being easygoing. Knowing that being determined and being prepared is what has to happen when opportunity shows up.
What do you think could be done to improve the media in general?
That's a great question. I think we could... This is how I'm going to answer this, Robbie. We can start having dinner with people whose opinions we don't share.
That's a good one. That's important. That's a sign of a true intellect, too. If you can hear somebody else's opinion and take it in and consider it. What superpower would you like to have?
I would like to have the cloak of invisibility.
That would be kind of fun or dangerous, depending on how you use it. Where can people find you? Because I know you do a lot of different things. You direct, you produce, you train people, you coach people. How can people find you?
People can find me at triciabrouk.com on my website. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter.
And we're also going to have a link. Thank you so much for joining us. And Tricia, thank you. You are a true gift.
Thank you.
And I feel like hiring you myself.
Oh,
so
anytime.
everyone could always use the extra skill to up their public speaking game. So thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
I know our audience is going to really love what you have to say.
Thank you.
See you next week.